Hello, guys. So, here we are back again with episode 3 of the Bandit Hideaway. The past 2 episodes have gotten some positive reviews, and I'm really glad that you guys are liking the content that we're putting out. And now we are back with episode 3, just episode 3. We have a lot more to go, guys. Don't worry about that. We have some great guests today. And well, let's just get on with it, right? So our first guest we have is TheOneChristo. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, Zuby. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this lovely group today.
Well, it's you don't have to thank me, man. You deserve a place here, to be honest. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, and now we have a rather old guest, actually. The name, of course, a few people would have heard of in the old Gwent, maybe not in the new one. You know, a lot of newcomers coming into the game. We have, I could see Flake's face there, right there. And we have AliasV. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm not that old, all right? I'm only 30. Jeez.
Nice.
I was gonna say, like, that was the lead into that. We have a very old and ancient and moldy old guest. And I was like,
thought he was talking about you, Flake.
That's what I thought too. Yeah. I thought that that one was definitely aimed right between my eyes, but it's okay.
I usually aim to do that, you know. It's like, you think it's that person? Nah, it's the other guest.
Oh,
okay.
Don't bully Flake.
And of course, I don't think he requires an introduction, but I guess we introduce him anyways. How are you doing, Flake?
I'd like one. It'd be nice.
Can I do it?
Okay.
How are you doing, Flake? How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm just glad that I didn't get the. We have a really old and rooted guest who has been here like an oak with a face on it and just moldy and crusty
Back
and old.
in my day.
Exactly. But the thing is that like my day extends to the present. So like I don't know. Am I some sort of overseeing orb of like Gwent justice that has just been here like
that's way too much responsibility for you, Flake. That is definitely not.
No, CDPR knows not to do anything but give me like look here. You talk when the light is on and you shut your mouth when the light is off. It's like gotcha.
Yeah, you're like that dusty old furniture in the room and oh we've got an open coming. Let's open the door. Let's dust off Flake. Yeah. Oh, it's over. Close the door. Turn off the lights on the way out.
Yeah, let the spiders scurry away. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm well. Thank you for asking.
I'm loving this. I'm loving this. There's nothing more, beautiful than seeing, 3 friends just going and shouting their answers out. I love it. Don't worry about it. Right. It's the best thing. I don't have to do anything then, right? I'm just here hosting you guys. But yeah, it's perfect.
It's your job to rein us in. Otherwise, we're just gonna run rampant.
Yeah, crack the whip, buddy. That's what we're here for. I'm okay with this. I can just go and go and go. Sometimes, literally, like when we're in Warsaw doing tournaments, they'll literally just shut my mic and not tell me. And then I'm just I have no idea. They just wheel me into a room and like lock the door. And it's like, okay, well, we'll take him out when we're live again.
We might be seeing that this Sunday as well, but of course, that's another topic to talk about. All right, so let's get on with a few things that we want to talk about. Topic 1 is basically a trip down memory lane. Of course, we're going to be talking about a few classic things about Gwent, and we're going to be hearing a few classic things as well from our guests here. And then the second topic will be a smaller one, which is just basic streaming and casting. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what our guests have in store for us today, guys. And of course, in chat, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them out. We will be considering them at the end of the topic, the best questions, and then we can just try and get an answer for that. Alrighty, so let's get on with the first question, guys. It's a very simple one. And we're going to be ladies first here, so Alias, you can go ahead first here.
Cool.
When did you first get into Gwent? If you remember an exact date, perfect. But when did you get into Gwent?
The first time I ever encountered Gwent was when my husband was playing through Witcher 3, and he would come across the card game. And obviously, well, no, it's Gwent. And I would sit there and I would be, intrigued by what was going on. And I would always ask if I could play. And he would save first and then let me try it out just in case I lost. Because, you have to beat everyone without losing. Mm-hmm. And that was probably about 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow.
And then when the game itself was released, I found that and started playing that and streaming it on my PlayStation 4 years ago, I think now. It was a while ago, yeah. So, yeah, that's when I first encountered it and then started playing it, like, religiously.
Wow, that's a long time ago. Okay. And Flake, what about you?
Well, an exact date, let's see. It was May 16th, 2015. The sun was shining that day. I remember this because I was indoors where I normally am, away from said sun. No, frankly, I don't know an exact date, but it was definitely around the time. It was in closed beta, and it was, I think, Nilfgaard had just wheeled in as a 5th faction. Yes, Nilfgaard was not always a faction. And I was introduced to the game by the OG himself, McBeard, because McBeard's wife and I are essentially we're like family. Like, I've known her since I was 3 years old. And I went to their place to go visit my closest friend, and he was there. And him and I bonded over playing Hearthstone ages ago. And then he just started talking about Gwent. And he gave me an access key to go play it. And it was basically curtains from there on out, where in all the way from closed beta. Like, I'm talking about back in the day when there were passive abilities, when factions had passive abilities, back when Nilfgaard just hit the board. Remember, and the time when Nilfgaard was the only faction that was able to mulligan cards between rounds, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize or remember.
You.
Wow. That's of course I don't know anything about that. And that's amazing. Okay, I didn't know they were the only ones who could mulligan. That's quite surprising to hear.
Every faction had their own shtick, which was kind of ridiculous. But yeah, old school Gwent is definitely a far cry from, I guess, what it is today.
Wow, okay. And TheOneChristo, what about you?
So, interestingly enough, I do have an exact date, only because I searched and it's when I created my GOG account. It was March 19th, 2017. And it was actually, so funny enough, that was the weekend I was actually visiting Flake, and he was playing or streaming, or I don't remember. We were just goofing around with Gwent, and I was looking at it going, this is so unique and so different and so cool. I want to try and get involved. And it was closed beta, and I had to, fight to get access to that. And then I did, and then I played it for like a month, and then I stopped playing it. And I don't even remember exactly why. I just remember I was playing Hearthstone at the same time and a few other games. And I just remember playing Gwent, and I was really into it for like a month. And then I just kind of gave it up. And I only got back into it probably about a year ago at this point.
Oh, okay. So, as you said, you don't exactly remember the reason why you left. But was it just that the other games were better at the time? Or like, how was it then?
No, I don't think it was that so much. I think part of it was, I had played Hearthstone.
The other players were better. So he's like, I'm tired of losing.
You know what? It's not entirely incorrect, though, because I'd been playing Hearthstone since, like you and I started playing Hearthstone from more or less the beginning, right? So I had gotten used to the meta, how the game works, what people were playing, and then I go dive into this brand new game, and I don't really know exactly what's going on, and the strategies are very different, and I didn't take the time to learn it, and I didn't have good cards, and I was probably frustrated, probably losing a bunch, and said, screw it, I'm just gonna go play the game I can win at. And that might be why, to be honest.
All right. Well, it's an honest answer if it is, There's nothing to be ashamed about. Maybe a little, but okay.
I have many things to be ashamed about, but giving up on Gwent once and coming back to it is not one of them.
I have photographic proof of many of those things that you should be ashamed about.
A valid point.
Wow. Okay, I see. A lot of inside talk coming out here, but I don't want that, okay? All right.
I talk blackmail, I don't know.
Those are for his OnlyFans. Or my OnlyFans.
A duo, like doing no, that would be, never mind.
Yes.
Never mind.
Topic change.
There would be no fans.
Yeah.
Yes, go on, Zuby, go on.
All right. Okay. So, of course, as you said, you've been playing Gwent for a long time. Of course, Alias played Gwent. And, okay, so what do you think made the game fun back then for you guys? Like, what was like the aspect of it that made you feel, okay, this is a game that I love playing compared to other card games, or something like that? And yeah, what would you say made it fun back then? We can start with Flake on this.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yep.
I mean, what made it fun back then was the fact that there was it was it's a game that operates in a different sort of framework that most card games typically are designed within. And within that framework, within that sandbox, you have the 2 life totals, you have units that sort of exchange damage, and that this was a completely different game in the sense that there's no mana or sort of resource that you have to manage to deploy or actually put cards into play. That was fresh and new, which I liked. And what really got to me was the fact that there was the 3-round system that allows you to really bank on more than just playing on curve, because playing on curve is important in games that have a mana system, but this doesn't have a mana system. It's you can play your strongest card on turn 1 if you want to, and it really turned the whole concept of what a CCG can be and really opened the door to different sort of variants. Now, I've played so many different CCGs in my life, starting with games such as Star Wars CCG, Lord of the Rings, etc., and those don't have the typical life total model that games like Hearthstone or Magic or whatnot or Runeterra have. And that really intrigued me, and because this was sort of a callback to an alternative rule set, an alternative win condition that the other games that I was playing, like Chris said, Hearthstone so much, that this was it was a departure from that. And that's what I really loved about it, was that it was different. It sort of it wasn't about curving out and making sure that you got what you need, etc. I like this because it sort of eliminated a lot of RNG and luck elements out of the game and relied more on proper deck building, resource management, etc. It sort of tapped into a different sort of skill set to win.
And like RNG is something I think which was an issue now and is still sometimes an issue. So is that something that you disliked when it came to Homecoming, like compared to Beta Gwent?
Well, I mean, there's a reason why there's such a negative stigma and like this dark cloud that hovers around the term Midwinter Update. If we talk about the Midwinter Update that occurred, where there was basically the developers promised a 500 card card pool, which means that by the end of a particular year, I think it was 2017 or whatever, and as like November, December sort of approached, they needed to dump an extra 150 or 200 cards into the pool to meet that demand. And a lot of those cards, in order to be different or from whatever existed, the creative space that they explored was not about new and interesting mechanics or keywords or whatnot. They went down the random, like, create, discover, that kind of avenue. And once that was really, explored and really exploited to the degree it was from the Midwinter Update, it became a really negative experience. Not just because RNG was determining a lot of these factors of the game, but it just became a situation where it's just, okay, your RNG cards are always going to be value plus from whatever the provision cost is, but there were no provision costs there. So basically, you're kind of playing a bronze card to really punch above the weight of what that bronze card could do. It was a situation where the RNG would have a better positive outcome. The odds were that the outcome would always be more positive, especially the silver cards that would usually find you an answer. Basically, the RNG was like, okay, here is a Swiss Army knife that it's going to discover 3 cards or create 3 cards. One of those 3 cards is likely going to solve the problem that you're facing. So that was the problem. It wasn't necessarily about deck building. It was about high rolling these fix-all cards that were in the system. And that really kind of just turned the experience very negative because it rewarded luck and not planning and skill-based deck building.
Right. And if we go to Alias and Christo on this same topic, like how would you guys, define it? Like, would you agree with Flake, like word for word there, or is there something else would you that you would like to add to that? Because I think I agree with him. I like hearing the other people talk about how Beta Gwent was. I can relate to what he's saying as well. So what would you say, Alias? Like, what would you say about it then?
Well, I think he pretty much hit the nail on the head with his assessment of the Midwinter Update, because that's around the time that I stopped playing, because I was tired of getting high rolled basically by someone who just, YOLO, rolled the dice and managed to find a win out of an unwinnable otherwise situation. So, like, for me, And just in terms of what made Gwent, super enjoyable, like this was the very first card game that I ever played. So I didn't have any reference point to Hearthstone or Magic or anything like that. So, I was coming into it, I was just fascinated with the world and the lore, and I enjoyed the voice lines and stuff and the little jabs that you could do with the emotes. And, it was a great first experience for card games for me. And, the thing that I didn't like was the RNG factor that came in with Create. Like that's kind of what killed the enjoyment for me, and I think ultimately the reason that I left the game to go and play something else, sometimes slightly more random in Magic the Gathering. Oh cool, do I have land? Great. Don't I? Oh well, I guess I'm not casting anything this turn.
That's but that's draw-based RNG, right? Like that's a different that's an RNG that you can kind of rely on in most card games. I know that I've had this discussion with so many other people where they just, sorry, I don't mean to hijack this question, just like
fine.
No, go
well,
ahead.
like I always have an argument with people who say that there's no, like, when someone draws a card that they need off the top of their deck and they say, oh, there's no RNG in Gwent or there's no RNG in whatever. Drawing cards is a universal, for the most part, unless you have all 25 or 60 or 30 or 40 cards in your hand, draw-based RNG is a negligible and moot point because you're always going to be shuffling a deck and drawing cards. So if you're going to say that a game is RNG based because you have to draw a card and refill your hand as it goes, that is an asinine argument to anyway. But yeah, I get it what you're saying. Yeah.
But that's pretty spot on, right? Like, regardless of how you want to look at it, any card game is going to have certain RNG elements, but you'd like to think that the RNG of drawing a card off the top of your deck over the sample size of 100 games is going to even itself out, right? In Magic, you're going to draw opening hands that you're going to have 0 lands, and then you're going to have other ones where, it's balanced out. So you'd like to think that evens out. I think I agree with you, Blake, when the problem comes to, okay, this card is RNG based, except that in most games, and like you were saying in Gwent, in Hearthstone, it was also the case, and a few other games as well, the chances of it high rolling something good are much higher than the chances of high rolling something low. So, the chances of it punching above its provisions are significantly higher than it not. And that's why the one time you lose feels really, really bad, because, if you get that low roll, it's not part of the math, it's not the right probability, and it just feels extra bad when you miss.
Yeah. And the draw RNG is something which is kind of okay, as you guys have said, right? This create stuff, I think where the hatred started coming in, right?
But I think they've addressed it pretty well, because a lot of the create mechanics that exist now, for instance, like Brathens used to be create one of the 3 bronze spies. Now it's most create effects is create a copy of a card already in your deck. So cards like Brathens now have to have that crutch, that support of filling your deck with these cards that you typically probably wouldn't want to play copies of already, because you rather sort of lean on Brathens to create those cards, because Brathens on his own is a very strong card. However, there are still cards that exist that have that big RNG swing to them, but they're not as played as much anymore, because they're, frankly, I think that they've addressed it well. So the RNG of the create mechanic now, at least the playable cards, things like Hattori creating traps, Brathens creating spies, etc. All of this has sort of been reined in by the fact that you now need to fill your deck with those cards. So there's some actual, there's
sense
a little
behind
bit. Exactly, it makes sense. It makes sense. Thank you. It's no longer a fix-all Swiss Army knife card, because you actually have to have the foundation for it to solve the problem already.
Plus, it also forces you to build your deck in a certain way. So something like Brathens, a great way to nerf it was to say you create something that's in your list. So now I have to include those spies when maybe I didn't in the past. So it forces you to move to a more synergistic approach, other than just, let's just throw a little sample of this in here and see what happens. Like bribery, for example.
Bribery. Say no to bribery, man. Say no to bribery. It's a long thing that we've been saying. And I think the chat did open up something pretty good. Like you were saying that, Brathens is kind of fixing it. Hattori also is kind of getting that treatment of create from starting. But then we see Oberon again, which is, it's random. So that's again another annoying thing. I think I've been talking about this also for quite a while, and other people in chat would also say that, hey, maybe Oberon in stage 3 would have that effect where Oberon is basically create a wild hunt unit from your starting deck and not just a random one. You know, maybe if you didn't draw your riders, you can get the rider synergy going, or you know, at least that makes you fill in those bronzes with proper wild hunt units, and you know, you can get that wild hunt synergy going, kind of thing. So, what would you think about that then?
I think as long as you're like in this sense spawning or creating from a very finite pool of cards. You know, there's not that many wild hunt cards. There aren't that many that are absolutely overpowered, so you don't feel bad. Yes, every once in a while somebody thins their riders and you feel bad, or they grab the movement card when they absolutely need it. But for the most part, you know, you're not getting something that's absolutely over the top that you're going to feel really bad about being about playing against.
There's always options, right? I mean, the thing about Oberon is in order to it, I mean, first of all, you're creating a random wild hunt unit. How many wild hunt units are really going to change the game? First of all, you need to have the dominance effect. Sorry, not dominance. You need to have the devotion effect of having only monster cards in your list to get the full benefit of it. Obviously, the second phase of Oberon, creating a random wild hunt unit, is good and all. But I mean, if you're getting the navigator, if you're getting the warrior or whatever, like, is that much big of a deal? Other than like, I would actually argue that it's a weaker card than Herald, because Herald, you're already going to be playing that 6-point raider out of your deck that's worth so much. So frankly, Oberon being able to have a wider pool of options is in my opinion a better thing. And now I get what you're saying about the whole giving it the Brathan's treatment of you have to have the wild hunt unit in your deck in order for it to sort of be balanced. But frankly, I don't think anybody's ever complained that Oberon is an imbalanced card. Sometimes it might spawn you that, like you said, that bruiser to push a card out of the way or to move a unit that might just sort of ruin your game plan. You know what? That's the fucking case, then that's the fucking case. It's the way it happens. It's a 12 provision card that might, perhaps, if you high roll it enough, be worth, I don't know, 14, 15 points. And how outrageous is that in the grand scheme of things when there are so many other cards out there, cards that are 6 provisions that play for 15 on occasion? Like, I don't want to, name names here, but there are some Viper Witcher Mentor bullshit cards out there that are actually a lot more problematic than Oberon. So honestly, I lean back oftentimes when people criticize cards. I'm like, is the card broken or did it beat you one day and you fucking hate that fact that it beat you? That's just, am I allowed to, I don't even know if I'm allowed to swear on the show. I'm sorry.
Oh,
You're now.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, good. But I mean, just the grand scheme of things, like, people just need to sort of throttle back a bit and say, is the card broken or busted, or did it just beat me and I'm salty about it? Like, 90% of Reddit threads complaining about cards is because somebody lost to that card 2 times in a row and don't have are too proud to make a change in their deck or play or too dumb to play around it. Like, it's just the way, the fact of the matter. I mean, I don't mean to be aggressive about it in a sense, but that's oftentimes it's like, you know what? If the card is beating you, play around it or change your deck. That's the fact of the matter.
Right. Yep.
Sorry.
No, it's perfectly fine. And you described Reddit perfectly there. You lose to a game, you see a thread literally writing. I think even... Yeah, go ahead.
Poor Reddit, just straight under the bus. Straight under the bus.
Well, I hope another bus runs over that bus too. Sorry. And everyone survived, and they all got $20 and went for ice cream. Okay, that's basically how I want this to go.
It's not even false, like, it's like Reddit just complaining about that. And I think even Ryan had put out a tweet recently showing the best of both worlds kind of thing, about balance on traps and how uninteractivity is going on right now with traps. There was one, post going, oh my god, I love traps. I played this so well. I played this trap at the right time and it killed this, and I played this and it killed that. And the other guy's like, traps is the worst thing ever, CDPR, delete it. And then he's just put this comparison screenshot. He's like, this is balance, isn't it? I don't see a problem here. And would you even blame the devs in that sense? I don't think you would.
Traps aren't a good deck. Like, it's a fun deck. It's an interesting deck. If it wins, it feels. If you lose to traps, it feels absolutely terrible because basically every card you play is getting insta countered, and that just feels like shit. And if you don't like that, stay the hell away from blue magic, because that will ruin your day forever and ever. And Alias can speak to this, but the whole concept of playing traps is as close to a counterspell as you'll have in Gwent. And I mean, it sucks, but it's easily played around if you know how to play around it. And I like Alias, tell us just how fun it is to play against like an Esper control list or an Azorius control list. Tell us about these stasis denial lists.
He's taking over the podcast, guys.
I'm not taking over. I just want people to confirm that if you do not like traps, Gwent is as safe a zone as you could possibly be when it comes to that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the one thing that I can say I don't like about magic is counterspells because, very much, basically.
I didn't do that.
I did that. I did that. No, yeah, I mean, from my side personally, like, I like playing with creatures, right? I like attacking. And if someone tells me, no, I can't put my thing on the battlefield, then I get very, very upset. I'd rather have my stuff killed than countered, but, counter decks or counter magic is a thing, and unfortunately, you just have to know what they could be running, what they're playing around, and try and find an opening to, do whatever it is that you need to do and resolve the threat that you need to. But yeah, I can understand the frustration. We've all been there.
Yeah, I think
that's the balance too between having something that's overpowered versus something just feels bad to play against. I think it's exactly like Flake said. Traps suck. They suck to play against. When you lose to them, it feels really bad. But yeah, they're not overpowered by any means. It just creates such a bad experience. And I think that's a different conversation you can have as well. If you're not thinking from a competitive sense, but thinking from, let's say, a new player experience. If I turn on the game, I play my first ever game against traps, I think this is awful and I never want to do this again. And then I put the game down. So I think that's
basically just kill your stuff as they enter, as they're played, or...
Yeah, well, they're basically, there's a whole myriad of them now, but a lot of it is just based on, like, if you play a spell, it'll trigger, or if you play a unit, it'll trigger, and there are strong ones and weak ones and whatever. But yeah, they're basically like secrets in Hearthstone or counter magic.
And they flip, right?
Correct, exactly. Okay. The difference is that when you're playing against a trap list, you know that it's on the ground and that you can kind of discern what it's going to be. The same thing is like when you're playing against in Magic and you see you're playing against a blue opponent, and it's like, okay, they have one blue open, so it could be a mystical dispute or a spell pierce, but they have two blue open, so it could be an essence scatter or this. There you go, exactly. You sick mother of wonderful human being. That said, like traps themselves, if you're intuitive enough and know what you're doing, you can dodge them pretty heftily. It's very hard to be fully fucking just completely wool over your eyes when it comes to playing against traps, because oftentimes you'll kind of know more or less what it is and you can play around it. And like Chris said, they suck for multiple reasons. Number one, they're not a great deck. They're a fun deck. They can win games, but it sucks to lose against them, because when you lose against them, it just feels terrible because it feels like you're handcuffed and there's nothing you can do. But when it's not a strong deck and it sucks to lose against it. So there's so much negative around it, but it's an interesting element and it's a different element and it's a unique element to Gwent that no other faction has. And the fact that they supported it in the previous patch is a great thing. I think that's a fantastic thing. But people complaining about something, oftentimes it's like, okay, did you just lose to it and you're pissed? Or do you actually have an argument behind it's toxic and it's unhealthy for the game and blah, blah, blah? Like, get fucked. Like, have an actual argument. Like, that's not an argument.
Also, it's fun when you're playing against it. You can go, it's a trap.
Yes.
Many people have already done that, actually. And yeah, Flake has the command on it, right? So yeah, that's pretty perfect there. But yeah, I think mostly what people hated about traps is just, I think, one trap, mostly, and it's this one, which is the serpent trap, which got the spring ability, which is basically like a pred dive for 7 provisions, and it's
that had another name when I played.
Oh, what was it? What was it called?
What was it, Flake?
I think that card
the thing
used
you
to
used to
draw
fetch with
you...
Ethne.
Yeah, or something like that. Or it used to be like you can draw. I think it was you could draw another, or it was like look at two special cards, or 2 or 3 special cards, play one with that. Exactly, that was it. It was like a 2 or 4 special cards, which used to be played with the old school Ethne ability, which then became the Francesca ability, which then became absolutely nothing because people abused the fuck out of it. Because
Okay.
one thing about playing Scorch one time, try playing against it like 3 or 4 times. Like that is just no fun. Before
Scorch is
initiative, before all that stuff, Scorch is fun, but
So Scorch still exists. That's nice.
it still exists. It has something called initiative now, where initiative is like if it's the first action you do on a turn, it gets stronger. So you can't
Okay.
do
Line it
a
up
leader
or-
ability and an order ability and then play it to make it better. It's just you have to think far ahead in advance. It's a nice way to sort of
Okay.
yeah,
So
it
you can
dials
protect
back
your
the card.
stuff, but blow up.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
it's like
Yeah. kind of.
it's rather than like fire these things and make everything one strength so that your Scorch is amazing on your last turn, you have to think ahead and do that on the turn before. Otherwise, the initiative doesn't take place.
Nice.
Uh-huh. Okay, so a quick question from chat. I think it's a very important one. Mr. Repic has asked, question for AliasV. If someone asked you to cast Gwent now, how long would it take for you to catch up?
Like how much time you got in the evenings to teach me.
Me?
Yeah, you would have to teach me.
I could. I mean, it would definitely be. I would not be against it. I will say that it would be.
Truth be told,
mean, you have the
I
foundation.
played a bit of Gwent a couple months ago. I think I got hold of one of Shinmiri's lists. It was a Nilfgaard one where you make a dude really, really big by playing all your cards, and then you make a copy of him. I have no idea what these things are.
Oh, Colgrim. That
That's
sounds
the
like a
one.
Letho Colgrim list.
Imagine
Yeah.
playing Colgrim. Oh my god.
That was fun.
I know, it was fun, and they literally nerfed it, I think, in the previous patch. They just changed a
What?
few numbers here and there. Yeah, it was
Oh.
the 6 provision card that Flake was talking about. It's a part of that
Yeah.
deck, so it's...
It's
Okay.
basically that's basically Alias. That's the equivalent of like going on hiatus, and then your big return is you like kick open the saloon doors and just start shooting everybody and like saying really horrible shit about everybody. It's like fuck you, Papa, and I'm back, bitches. And
That
like
sounds
everybody,
like exactly how you make a big return. That is what
Oh,
you do.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you
Shoot
just
everyone,
sort of
then no one knows you're there.
Clint Eastwood
Yeah.
everybody and like spit on their corpse. But that's basically what it is when you sort of show up and the first thing you do is play a Colgrim Clogger list. It's like, hey, if there's any reason to, if you forgot why you should hate me, here's a good
Quick
reason.
chat, all right. They said, "Hey, go play this." They sent me deck lists, so I was like, "Okay, cool, I'll play that." So I played that. Don't
Always blame
leave
chat.
it
It's the
with
safest
chat,
bet. Because
Yeah.
you don't have to
And then they
blame
told
one
me how to use
specific
it and
person.
stuff, and it was fine. So,
You just
yeah,
you
I mean,
blame the organism that is chat. It's all of chat. It was all their fault.
hashtag blame chat. But yeah, I mean, it'll take me a couple weeks to, I guess, to know the cards and all the abilities and stuff. Because, like, yeah, when I stopped playing, provisions weren't a thing. I understand how they work, but you know, like all the different keywords and stuff, like initiative, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what that means. With like some stuff, I know what it means, but if I would fail a pop quiz, let's just say that.
Yeah, but
She'll be back.
I think when it's initiative, the thing is these cards are usually not even run. I think this one in Igni is like they do have initiative, but right now Igni is only in the meta because we have such tall cards going and stuff like that. But they're barely, a part of it. You don't even need to bother much about these cards when it comes to tournaments, because in an open deck list, if you see these cards, they're just like, oh, okay, I'll just play around it. And a lot of
Yeah.
good players know how to play around this stuff. So, you'll be fine. I hope you return. Okay. All right. One other question about the old days. Was there ever any kind of a dev interaction in those days? Like, nowadays it's like this partners Discord and things like that where we can put in, maybe some suggestions, maybe some bug reports or something like that, and they look into it. But was there some kind of a different system back then, or is it just the same now?
Well,
Anyone can go ahead, yeah.
All right, I'll fire off on this one. Basically, the dev interaction has always been fairly strong. There are
Right.
periods where they kind of goes darker here and there, and you might not get as much information as you might want, but that's on the sort of macroscopic view of everything. If you're looking more closely, the devs are always in communication with at least this sort of smaller group of players and content creators who are really playing the game hours and hours a day. They're always in discussion with them. Now, back when I was a small flake and not a medium or otherwise supersized flake, but when I was just sort of getting indoctrinated into the Gwent community, I've had interactions with people like Pavel Berja and even Vlad. You know, like I remember having a Twitter discussion, like a Twitter DM discussion with Vlad regarding smaller, unique tournaments, and I had no idea who this person was. And we're chatting back and forth, and then I realized, I'm like, holy shit, this is a guy who sort of runs the tournament scene. I had no idea. There was always interaction on Reddit and such. Nowadays, it kind of has progressed, and there is the partner system. And I mean, I have my own criticisms of what the partner system is. I mean, it's getting revamped, is what I can say. I mean, I don't know if I can talk more about detail about that. It's not for me to say that, but I think a lot of people know that there's going to be some changes coming to like the ambassador system and the partner system and whatnot. But for the most part, their communication has always been good. And it might not be that the decisions, like what you need to do is you need to understand that the decisions they make, whether you agree with them or not, it doesn't affect the fact that they're communicating or not. I mean, you may not like what they're saying, but at least they're saying something. And you can't have a situation where you're always going to be talking with people, where they're putting out like daily or weekly sort of state of the union addresses about the game or whatnot. They have their lives and they have their shit that they got to do as well, and sort of dropping in with all kinds of information about here's what's coming and here's what we're thinking and we hear you about this card and blah blah blah. I mean, like, what's the point? Because eventually you also need to understand that it's like, I don't have a child, but I've heard this many times, and sometimes at a certain point, when the child, you need to sort of, raise your kid where you can't always go and coddle them every time they cry. Sometimes you need to let them cry it out and understand that they have to be left to their own devices in certain cases. You can't always be there at their every beck and call. And I think the devs take that approach as well, that every single whiny post on Reddit or on this or on that or on Discord about a card that somebody doesn't like, what do you expect? Do you expect them to put out a press release addressing that situation? No, they just take note and they're like, okay, we're going to, take a look at the data and make the appropriate changes when they come. And not everyone's going to like every single change, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing or that their communication's bad. It might just mean that you don't like what happened. It's just the way it is. But the communication from then to now has always been fairly good. There are patches where it might be spotty, but it has always generally been very good.
And the thing I want to add to that, and you kind of mentioned it already, Flake, is at the end of the day, if you're complaining about something or you're unhappy with the change, the patch, the whatever, you also may not be the only thing that these devs care about, right? You're trying to balance a game amongst pro players, casual players, streamers, content creators. There's so many things to look at, and that doesn't mean that you can just make a snap reaction and say, well, these streamers are complaining about something, let's go give them this, or these pro players have a problem, let's go give them this. You have to look at your target audience, and it's wide and it's varied. So you have to make a smart business decision around it, because as much as we enjoy ourselves and enjoy playing the game and all of that, this is a business at the end of the day, right? So you've got to make the proper business decisions to make sure that the game, does last and endure over the long run.
True.
Yeah, back when I was playing, similar thing, lots of interactions with the devs, chatting to Berger a lot. It always felt like they were very approachable, which was super cool. And if you had suggestions, that sort of thing, it felt like you could speak it to them and they'd actually listen. And if enough people mentioned the same sort of thing or change that they wanted, then it would be implemented. I also remember just before, it was either before Midwinter or I'm not sure which patch it was, Homecoming perhaps, they had a Discord where they invited a bunch of people to play test the game and give feedback on it before the patch went live. So I think that sort of thing is really helpful when it comes to making decisions about mechanics and cards and that sort of thing. So
they don't do that much anymore.
They don't do that much anymore? That's unfortunate.
PTRs and such are I mean, they exist, and I've been in some of the more recent ones. For instance, like the patch with the newer cards that just came out, there was a very brief window for a very few amount of people to sort of play test it. And what people will understand is that a lot of these cards that did come out were a lot worse or a lot more unbalanced than they are when they come out. So there is some actual, like when a card comes out and people are like, this is bullshit, who the fuck was thinking about this or that? We'll just think that one card that might be a problem out of the God knows how many that are released in a batch, that could be 2 or 3 or 4 times as many problematic cards that get tweaked by a lot of caring and passionate people who take the time to evaluate the card, see it in action, and let other people who are more creative and a lot more capable of deck building and finding those those cracks, that you can exploit, giving it to them and saying, find me how this card can be broken. And sometimes they do, and sometimes it's harder and it takes time. But what you need to understand is that when a card is released and a small PTR of about 30, 40, God knows how many people potentially on a big scale or larger scale, only have a minute amount of time to find the exploits or the bugs or the problems or the overpowered nature of some of these cards. Whereas once they're released into the wild, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people playing hundreds of thousands of games who will eventually fine tune and find those interactions that are otherwise broken. So releasing those kinds of cards to the wild is like, okay, like sometimes that's part of the testing aspect of it is, and just think of what these kinds of cards would be like without the PTR process.
Same thing happens with Magic, but the only problem is, being a paper-based game, is that those cards can never be tweaked or adjusted or given a new name. They just get banned. So...
Wow, like
disadvantage.
I think some cards like
Eldraine.
some cards maybe do deserve that. Like think the Viper Witcher Mentor maybe, Flake. What do you think? Just axe that card? What do you think about that?
I wouldn't axe the card necessarily. I would probably make it a little bit more expensive or just kind of change the nature of the dynamic of what that card does. The problem I feel with that card is that it's a guaranteed high roll of in a certain degree. What Viper Witcher Mentor does is it punishes a player who does not draw their best cards. And that's, I suppose, where draw RNG and such gets involved in it. But there is a certain element sometimes where you don't want to have a super amazing hand in the first rounds. You need, bronze cards or shittier cards to sort of dump and play into a round so that you have a stronger game plan late in the game. So what the Viper Witcher does there is that if your hand is too good, okay, fine. You have all these great cards. Now you only have big cards to play in round 1 and you'll have shit in round 3. If your hand is too bad, the Viper Witcher Mentor is going to absolutely just freaking jackhammer you with a 12, 13, 14 point slam for 2 or 3 turns in a row. So you need to find that nice little margin, that little area where you can have all your top provision cards in your hand and some garbage, and they have to synergize well. Otherwise, that Viper Witcher Mentor is going to come in as the third to last card, the second to last card, and the last card in a round that I don't say doesn't matter, but then you have it leaves those decks to have their gold cards as their win condition later. It's really tough to go there and just see their 6 provision cards slam down 13 to 15 points free and clear like that, purely because you didn't draw your best cards. Like it just feels bad. I don't know how it would change it, but that's not for me to discuss.
But the beauty of the digital world is it is changeable. To Alias's point, it's not like you go and you get this great card that's, fantastic in my deck, and I've got the paper copy, and it's worth money now, and things are good, and then, they ban it because it's OP, and it's now worth nothing, and nobody wants it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Sawyer put out a point there, right? You guys think that the newer stuff gets too strong sometimes, because if you see Passiflora in 3 turns seems to do only the points as location plus Bear Witcher does in 2 turns, for example, and Passiflora is basically a 14 provision card, whereas the location and the Bear Witcher thing is kind of an 8 provision thing, because he plays a 5 provision card for you for free, the location. And then you can just play another one and then heal it, and you get the same point output as Passiflora does. And then you see the Viper Witcher Mentors, which is here at 6 provisions. And it gives you 15 points if you don't drop ball, for example, and you just clap the opponent. Right?
So power creep is always going to be a thing in a card game to a certain degree. You have to create things that are as good, if not better, than previous cards. Otherwise, nobody plays them. But at the same time, you also have to look at context. So sure, Bear Witcher or the location is as many or more points, let's say, than Passiflora, except those 2 exist in different factions and in different decks. What I think Way of the Witcher did in the most recent expansion was nice because they also created different archetypes you can play. You can play NR Witchers, you can play Clog as much as people hate it, but it gives you other options to play, and it's not just, let me take the deck I was already using, top grade 2 or 3 of the new cards, and just keep doing the same thing. So I think to create variety is important, and that allows you to have that flexibility with cards that you're not just constantly power creeping everything you've ever released.
Well, power creep is always going to be in card games, just for exactly what Chris said, is that you need to give an appeal to new cards to be played. And there's only so many times that you can, you can create cards and you can print cards that are going to be appealing in a certain archetype or faction or whatnot. For instance, okay, so we need this 5 provision card to be appealing over another 5 provision card, like the let's say, in Skellige, like the Raider. The Raider is a really great 5 provision card that gets better and better as the rounds go. So what do? Well, you have to synergize them with a certain deck archetype, etc. And I mean, from that point on, power creep is just it's something that will always plague card games forever, because power creep is the result of trying to make new cards playable and appealing. And the way that you can kind of deal with that is through synergy value out of the card. But I mean, if you take this back to another card game like Hearthstone, once they printed the Piloted Shredder at 4 cost, nothing came close to that card in the 4-drop spot for a long time, unless it was a deck that really required a certain synergistic element to it in the 4-drop spot. But I mean, this kind of can be all come back to the fact that in the 4-drop spot, the Piloted Shredder was the most amount of value, traded the best with the most amount of things, and it was just the best card in that slot. And everything after that was garbage. So that is power creep in its most purest form of, here's a card, everything after this is, so how do you make something better than Piloted Shredder? Power creep. And that's the whole point. And does it exist in Gwent? Yeah, it exists in Gwent. Definitely. It's going to exist in Gwent. But c'est la vie. That's card games, friends. That's how it goes.
Yeah, of course. And if we keep going on about this, I think we will be here for a very long time, which we do not want, of course. And there's a lot of things that, we expect change and things like that. But as you said, we have to get new cards and we have to get people to play them. So you just got to wait for that period of time. If you hate a card, okay, just you gotta suffer for like 1 or 2 months, and then we see a small nerf coming in, and then we're all happy. All right, so I think we can conclude the topic 1 for that case, because we want to at least have something to talk about in topic 2, and coming close to the end. So the next topic is basically just basic streaming and casting and things like that, right? So Alias and Flake, you guys are Twitch partners, and you've been there for quite a long time and things like that. So what really made you guys get on this platform called Twitch? Like what got you there? And I guess we can start off with Alias with that one.
I was bored.
Okay.
No, truth be told, we discovered Twitch and we took an interest in it, but we were living in South Africa at the time, so we couldn't really stream from there because the internet is shite. It's probably better now because I have seen quite a few South African streamers like Spyro and a couple others. Miss Lady J. Yeah, I got there.
Imagine not saying Thea.
Damn it.
Imagine not saying Thea, guys. Okay,
and Thea, yes. I didn't interact much with Thea, but I have noticed her. I'm making her name, so that's very cool. But yeah, when we moved to Canada, first thing we got was good internet, and my human bought all the stuff that he wanted to start streaming with. Tried it, didn't enjoy it super much, and while he was trying that, I started streaming on my PlayStation because I had a whole bunch of time in the mornings before I went to work, because my work day only started at like noon. So I was bored in the mornings. I just started streaming. I was like, cool, let's just play and see what happens. And then, it was actually pretty fortunate because Gwent's a good directory to start streaming in, because there's not it's not overly saturated with creators. So the average viewers per channel is actually a lot higher than quite a few other directories are. So yeah, I built my audience up, and it got really lucky, I guess. Right place, right time, and just kind of went with there. It all just snowballed, so it was awesome.
And Flake, what about you?
Bribery, lots of bribery, and paying people off to notice me. Like every time there's that stupid bot that shows up, it's like, wanna be famous? And then there's like a link there. Yeah, that's basically, I click that every single time. No, That's not true. So I started by having a big interest in just like stage work and broadcasting in general. In college, I did a lot of both. So that kind of propelled me to just explore the interest more. I interned at a sports radio station for about a year, which was really cool. And then I had to get an actual job. And then I started bartending and doing like performance bartending and stuff like that for about 4 or 5 years. And then eventually I got a real job in the corporate world and I fucking hated it. And it was just not me because I couldn't run my mouth the way I would typically want to. And basically from that point on, I mean, I was this entire time since I was 13, I've been playing CCGs. So Hearthstone was a thing. I would play that all the time. And eventually someone said, why don't you just stream it? If you're playing it at home, try streaming it. You like running your mouth and being obnoxious and loud and stupid. I was like, yeah, that's all what Twitch is. So yeah, so Chris can definitely attest to that because Chris was actually part of the college radio management team with me, which was interesting. However, that kind of sort of spread to doing Gwent and trying so hard to get some type of casting or broadcast repertoire with CDPR. And eventually we did the Wild Hunt tournaments in Philadelphia ×2. And I hosted those. And that's where CDPR was like, hey, this guy is not a complete douchebag. Just minor levels of douchebaggery. So we'll give him a shot, and then it went from there. But the struggle on Twitch is a completely different animal, and I found that a lot of it sort of opened up, and there was a lot more clarity once I just stopped caring about numbers and more so about just doing what I loved. And you got to sort of fall back on why you do it. And I don't do it for numbers or for money. I mean, the money and such are great, but the opportunity is this fact that like since I was a certain age, I just was gravitated towards broadcasting and loved it so much. So I put 2 and 2 together. I love card games. I love broadcasting. Let's try Twitch. And that sort of just blossomed into every day waking up absolutely just thrilled and happy that I get to do what I do.
Wow. And Christo, what about you? I know you're going to be a future partner. I'm going to be supporting you throughout because you're doing great. And, your streams are always fun to watch when it comes to Gwent. So what made you start though? Like what made you, kick it up?
Yeah, so I kind of take a little bit of both Alias and Flake's stories because one, with COVID, I was bored. And two, having played card games with Flake forever. We were part of the same, radio station at our college. So, I got comfortable doing that. I've worked in sales my entire life as well. We moved to working from home. I had the time on my hands. I saw Flake do it and have been around, Twitch and watching people for a long time. So I said, you know what? I'm already home. I've already got a camera and a microphone for doing all this work from home stuff. Let's give it a go and try and see what happens. And it's exactly like Flake said. If I'm going to be sitting at home playing these games anyway, I might as well do it. Even if I'm talking to myself on Twitch and nobody watches me, well, I'm still doing the same thing I'd be doing otherwise. And a lot of fun stuff has followed, not taking it too seriously and just kind of doing what I enjoyed. And I got involved with 983, helping them organize and run tournaments and stuff just because I thought it was fun. I never got paid for that stuff. It was all volunteer. And then that turned into an opportunity to, oh, hey, we're doing a pregame show. You want to host that? Hey, we need a caster for a Mythgard. You want to do that? And culminating with me casting this Sunday with my bestest buddy. So just kind of one of those things that snowballs over time, and you just have fun doing it. I think when you have fun and you're passionate about it, it shows.
Yeah. And yeah, as you said, this Sunday, yep. I'm so glad when I saw that tweet. It was released just a few hours ago, guys. If you didn't know, Christo and Flake will be casting this Sunday the qualies for Season of the Bear, I think, right? So yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch that. So as we are coming close again with the time, I have one important question for you guys. We can start with Flake on this one. Do you remember your first ever raid when you started on Twitch? And can you give us how your reaction was, or was it a big number and you just went, oh my gosh, kind of thing?
I think the first big raid I ever received was from Vishra. I don't know if you guys remember this, but this is an old school name if ever there was one. Vishra.
I remember Vishra.
Exactly. Vishra was a great player, a tournament. He was a ladder beast, much like Saber is today, somebody who's just perennially. Yes.
I just went on about how he's been broadcasting his whole life and he can't speak English.
That pretty much, yeah, exactly. I can, I'll recite. I can speak Dothraki or Klingon, but English that just escapes me. That said, Vishra was always a tournament stalwart from the get-go, from beta. He was always a top 8, top 10 player on the ladder, and would regularly have a few hundred people on his channel. And I would watch him play because he was a high-level player. And eventually, I remember the first time he rated me, and that was a big deal. And it was always, it's great because it's nice to, it's nice to have those numbers and whatnot. But again, the numbers mean nothing. It's the people that were brought there. And he brought along a lot of people that were just great people. And then eventually they stuck around, and you make friendships, and you meet a lot of people through that. And I'll always be grateful for that raid, that first big raid from a while ago. And it's always been great. And that was the first sort of big raid, was a couple hundred people from Vishra way back in the day.
Okay, Alias, what about you?
My first big raid was from Petrify, who also used to stream Gwent, and now he's making Gods Unchained. He's on the dev team for that, I think. So yeah, I was averaging around like 12 viewers maybe, and he dumped about 100 or so on me, and I kind of freaked out. Wow. And I was very nervous, and I started sweating profusely. I was just like, hi, what? Basically just freaking out. But yeah, it was cool. So I'll always remember that one. And then like one of my biggest raids that I got was actually from CDPR themselves. And I think it's actually the biggest raid that I've had to date, since it was something like 12,000 people after a championship or an event. So I was just like, yeah, that's cool.
Reminds me of when after Pajabol won the Gwent Challenger, and then as the he wins the tournament. Okay, he wins all this money. He wins the tournament. He's like the grand fucking champion of the world. I think he wins Master Series 2 or whatever it was, and then he goes and starts playing the game, and then the CDPR raids him, and then everybody's railing on him because he was like rank 7 or something like that. He's like not even pro rank. And then it's just, the funny part was, like, imagine the fact that you just watched this guy win the world championship, and then you queue into him in ranked like immediately after, and he had like 12 or 50,000 viewers. It was hilarious.
Nice.
And Christo, what about you?
For me, it was McBeard. So, kind of like what Alias was saying, I was probably averaging like 15 or so viewers, and he showed up with, I don't know, a couple hundred. Just like, okay, no problem, no big deal, I'll take that. But it was funny because somebody popped into chat and said, McBeard says hi. And I was like, that's really weird that some random person just pops into my chat and tells me somebody else says hi. And then the raid came in, and they explained he couldn't stick around and whatnot. So that was really cool. And I think just to go back onto what Flake said, it was cool because it wasn't just the numbers, but the people that he brought along. Guys like Rumblin' Bumcheeks and Psychoki are regulars in my stream, and they'll both come out and say that they found me through that raid, and that was almost a year ago, and have stuck by me since. So just really cool stuff when you're trying to build your stream and build your brand and all of that, to have some people raid you and just have some of those viewers stick around for the long haul.
Yep, exactly. I think that's what I go through a lot as well, being a growing little boy as well in this in this environment. So yeah, definitely. And I think with that, we are going to conclude this episode. We had a lot of good talks when it comes to the classic Gwent, and of course future changes possibly. And Alias, just one burning question before we go for you. If Gwent was ever to go back in time and maybe do a little bit of a old school stuff that they have been doing earlier, would you come back?
I think the game is good as it is now. I don't think it needs to go back to where it was. They've gone through this whole metamorphosis and stuff. Shaking your head there, Flake. The time that I spent in it for a little while, it felt good. I didn't feel like I was getting run over. I felt like I had a chance, not knowing what the hell I was doing most of the time. But yeah, an old school, like an old client or something to play on would be fun for nostalgia reasons. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to be gained from going backwards in life or in video games.
All Alrighty. And as I've kept you guys here, with me for so long, where can we find you guys? Starting with you, Christo. Where can these lovely people in chat find you?
TheOneChristo. I kept it easy. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, TheOneChristo. That's where you can find me. You can especially find Flake and I on Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time.
Oh yeah.
6 p.m. CEST. That one thing I had to remember and I can't figure it out, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
It's fine. People will know. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
and
they'll find
okay, Alias, where can we find you?
Now, if you Google me, you'll find me. AliasV, hi. Twitch.tv/AliasV if you want to come and hang out. I do mostly magic stuff, so if you want to see what the other card games are like, come hang out and I can teach you a thing or two. And scream at the mana, flood, or screw.
There's no in between. It's one or the other.
And Flaky Flake, what about you? Where can we find you?
Twitch.tv/WatchFlake. But screw that noise. On Sunday, you're gonna watch Twitch.tv/TheOneChristo because we're gonna be broadcasting a qualifier event. So screw all the other noise. That's what you gotta do on Sunday. Do it. Just do it. Do it on Sunday.
Are you bringing that suit? That everybody wants to know about the suit.
They don't. Okay, first of all, in 7 seconds or less, CDPR has a wardrobe team that are super smart and super awesome. They dress me because I could barely dress myself. Pants are a burden, and that's that. Yeah, so no suit.
Yeah, and Bribery wanted to know where you get the suit from. Maybe you can tell him later on where you get that
smarter,
suit from. He really
smarter and better stylish people than I do. There's a team of professionals that make sure that I look presentable.
Alrighty. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for being on. It was definitely an amazing episode. And hopefully everyone in chat enjoyed it. I see Repik was in chat today. I hope he enjoyed it as well. And once again, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. It's always a pleasure. And I will see everyone soon. And take care, guys. Take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.